Lesson 2, Pre-Colonial Philippines. Course, Readings in the Philippine History.
This book was written by Antonio de Morga, a Spanish official. It's considered one of the most important accounts of the early Spanish colonization in the Philippines. Morga described what he observed about Filipino life and culture, but he also included his own personal opinions and biases. Despite this, his work gives us valuable insights into how Spaniards viewed early Filipinos. This makes it a key source for understanding how colonial thinking influenced the documentation of Philippine history.
Morga described some indigenous people as having dark skin and curly hair. He used terms like barbarians and called them untrustworthy. These descriptions reflected the fear and prejudice many colonizers had toward native communities. It's important to remember that such harsh language reveals more about the colonizers' mindset than about the actual lives and values of the early Filipinos.
Before colonization, leadership was often passed through family lines. Both men and women could become leaders. Chiefs, or dadas, protected and guided their communities. Bravery in battle was respected, and leaders who showed courage gained more followers. Society was organized in layers, the Datu and Majinu at the top, followed by Maharlika, Timawa, and Alipin. This structure shows how Filipinos already had complex systems of governance.
Marriage was a respected institution, and dowries were usually given by the groom's family. Weddings were big celebrations with food and gatherings. When problems like adultery happened, they were often resolved through community decisions, sometimes involving compensation or violence. Inheritance was shared equally among all children, regardless of gender.
Borrowing with interest was common, but unpaid debt could lead to the loss of one's freedom. Sometimes, even children of debtors became enslaved. Trade was often done through barter, not money. Filipinos traded goods such as food, land, and gold, showing that their economy was already functioning well before Spanish contact.
Social rules were often based on status. Practices like concubinage and incest were sometimes tolerated depending on one's rank. The Spaniards viewed Filipino religion as confusing or fearful, but indigenous people had their own systems of belief. Catalonas, spiritual leaders, guided communities, and belief in spirits was widespread. Their faith was rich but misunderstood by colonizers.
This burial jar was found in Palawan's Taban caves and dates back to around 890 to 710 BC. It was used in secondary burials, where bones were placed in jars. The jar features a carved boat and two human figures, symbolizing the journey to the afterlife. This proves that ancient Filipinos had spiritual beliefs long before Spanish colonization.
Discovered in 1990, the Laguna copper plate is a thin metal sheet with ancient writing. It shows that Filipinos already used writing systems and had social structures, like royalty and debt laws. The document records the forgiveness of a debt by a ruler, evidence of organized governance and legal systems.
The Boxer Codex is an illustrated manuscript from the Spanish period. It contains over 70 colored drawings of Filipino communities. The codex presents various native groups, their clothing, traditions, and physical features. Though drawn by colonizers, it still provides important visual records of how early Filipinos lived and looked.
Visayan men and women wore tattoos as symbols of bravery, strength, and identity. Using heated metal, they decorated their arms, chest, and back. These tattoos were not just for looks, they told stories of courage and status, and were worn with pride.
Noble couples from the Visayas dressed in gold-embroidered clothes and wore gold-decorated belts. Their outfits made sound when they walked, showing elegance and wealth. Their appearance reflected their high social status and pride in cultural identity.
Tagalog noble women wore tight-fitting, colorful clothes, while both men and women adorned themselves with gold jewelry. They also wore imported fabrics like satin and cotton from China. Fashion was a way to show one's family status and pride in heritage.
Among Zambales communities, honoring the dead involved mourning rituals such as fasting, cutting hair, and not eating rice until revenge was achieved. These practices were tied to family honor and social duty. While harsh by today's standards, they reflected deeply rooted values in justice and loyalty.
Warriors from Cagayan wore feathered headdresses and crowns. They carried wide daggers and used shields and helmets made of local materials. Their hairstyles and accessories signaled strength and identity, blending beauty with readiness for battle.
The Ito or Negrito people were known for their skills in archery and hunting. They used poison-tipped arrows and were both respected and feared for their precision. Despite their small size, they were wise, strong, and had deep knowledge of nature.
Women in Cagayan hid gold from Spaniards and wore jewelry made from rare stones. These styles represented wealth, beauty, and cultural pride. Gold wasn't just for trade, it symbolized power across the islands, and women's roles were central in preserving these traditions.
Fray Juan de Plasencia wrote about the customs of early Tagalogs. He documented their everyday life, from marriage to labor to religious practices. His account is one of the earliest to capture how Tagalog society functioned before being changed by Spanish rule.
Spaniards misunderstood Filipino spiritual practices. They labeled local healers as witches and associated herbal medicine and love charms with superstition. Unfortunately, many indigenous beliefs were dismissed as devil worship, when in truth they were part of a rich and meaningful tradition.
Early Filipinos believed in supernatural beings like the Mangkukulam, who could breathe fire, and the Oshwa, said to eat flesh. Figures like the Mangagayoma made love charms, while the Haklaban could harm with gestures. These stories were passed down orally, reflecting the rich imagination and beliefs of the people.
Sonat were believed to predict a person's fate after death. Babaylan or Pangatihodian were spiritual guides who interpreted signs and healed the sick. Some male Babaylan were called Bayagin, who embraced a feminine identity. These individuals were respected in their communities, showing that gender roles were fluid and valued differently from colonial norms.
These historical sources show that the Philippines already had a rich culture before colonization. Our ancestors wore gold, engaged in trade, had systems of leadership, and practiced their own religions. By learning about their values and way of life, we better understand who we are as a nation today. These stories form part of our strong, diverse, and proud national identity.